Hi everyone, welcome to Sunny Day Discussions. I am Sunny Day. Today I want to go over some police issues and among other things. So the first thing I'm going to get into is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a black woman was attacked by a police officer. The officer claims he was attacked, but body camera footage shows the officer approach a parked car and demand ID from this woman. The woman asked, "Why?" And his response was, "Because I said so," or because I asked for it. She told him she no longer feels comfortable because of his aggression. And the officer then threatened to take her to jail if she doesn't produce her ID. During the entire encounter, she was on the phone with her mom. She was parked there waiting for a friend to join her so that they could go to the beach to celebrate her birthday. So she asked the officer what she did wrong. And it wasn't even a traffic stop. Keep that in mind. So she hesitated to give her ID. And according to my understanding of the law, she actually doesn't have to. It was not a traffic stop. He did not pull her over. If he pulled her over, she would, of course, be required to give her ID. And if he asked her to step out of the car, she would be required to. But because it was not a traffic stop, according to my understanding, he needed to have reasonable, articulable suspicion that she had committed a crime, was going to commit a crime, or was, a suspicion of a crime. And he didn't have that because she was just parked there on the phone. So he ended up forcefully pulling her out of her car and punched her several times. Threw her to the ground, punched her several times. The images of her injuries were a black eye, swollen black eye, bruises on her arms from where the officer grabbed her arm to pull her out of her car, and bruising on her neck. So she did nothing illegal, keep this in mind. Officer Davis claimed that she was non-compliant and attacked him. Ms. Cooper testified that she received several blows to the head and injuries to her face, arms, and legs. Officer Davis testified that he was bleeding profusely from the head as a result of being attacked by Ms. Cooper. Well, as far as I can tell from the body cam footage, he was not attacked. And if he did get his head hurt, I saw no images of that. If he did hurt his head, it was when he went to the ground with her, throwing her on the ground. We all know that if you get even a slight little cut in your head, it's going to bleed profusely because of all the little blood vessels. So she was ultimately charged with battery on a law enforcement officer and resisting arrest. Officer Davis has a history of excessive force. In 2017, he was taken to court after forcibly arresting a man and then tasing his wife. And he originally approached this couple because they were illegally parked in front of a grocery store. And after ticketing them for being illegally parked, the man cursed at the officer. Completely within his rights. It's the First Amendment. It's protected speech. You can flip off an officer. You can call him every name under the book. Curse at him as much as you want. Perfectly legal. But this officer apparently got his ego bruised. So he went into his car, turned on his emergency lights, and proceeded to pull them over. And he pulled them over under the excuse that it was reckless driving, I think is what it was. Basically then he pulled, the man's name was Mr. Barkley. He pulled Mr. Barkley out of the car and told him to lie on the ground. So he did. And then the officer Davis proceeded to put his knee on the guy's back. So, of course, the wife is worried about the life of her husband because that's, a lot of men die or are permanently injured because of being kneeled on by police. So she gets out to make sure her husband is okay. And her husband's like, no, I've got this. I'm okay. Get back in the car. So she does. Then the officer goes over to the door, the car door, opens it, and pulls her out. She did nothing wrong. This is supposedly a traffic stop. She got back in the car. She did not interfere. He pulled her out and threw her to the ground and proceeded to tase her 3 to 5 times, according to witnesses. And then he arrested her for resisting arrest. Let's see, where was it? Okay, battery on an officer and obstruction with violence. This deputy, this officer, has a history of this kind of behavior. It's kind of a pattern. It seems like he assaults citizens and then claims that he was the victim. He also had a woman file a complaint against him because she was walking her service dogs on the beach and he kept harassing her. So she filed a complaint. And again, it must have bruised his ego because he ended up pulling her over, pulling her out of the car and arresting her. Did not tell her why she was under arrest or anything like that. And he threw her on the ground. So obviously, this man has not been held accountable. And I can get into a whole spiel on police brutality until they're held accountable, and not by the taxpayer or, footing the bill for lawsuits, until the officer itself or the police department themselves are held accountable with monetary damages or anything like that. It's not going to change, because officers don't really care if a lawsuit is brought, because all they have to do is go in and testify. It's no skin off their back. Now, last year, a black FedEx driver was shot at by a white father and son duo. Sounds vaguely familiar. The shooters, Gregory and Brandon Case, were charged after turning themselves in. They were released on bond a day later. They literally tried to kill him. Gibson, the driver, was fired from FedEx because he is still on workman's comp. He has not been cleared by doctors to return to work yet. You can imagine the mental anguish and fear that being shot at caused. And he wasn't just like he was driving by and was getting shot at, which is traumatizing enough. But what happened was that Gibson was in a van that was not a professional official FedEx van. It was a rental delivery van. So it was not marked as FedEx, but his uniform was. And he was delivering on his route in Brookhaven, Mississippi. And he was delivering a package to a house on these two men's property. And one of the men took his truck and tried to box the FedEx driver in. And when the FedEx driver was able to get around that blockade, that's when the other man opened fire. So just hearing that part of the story that I didn't initially hear in the initial reporting, it almost seems like it was a setup. Like they were just waiting for a person who matched the right description to attack. Now, the judge declared a mistrial when it went to trial because of the fact that the officer allegedly intentionally kind of flubbed everything up. So rather than letting the trial proceed, the men be found guilty and then have it reversed on appeal, he declared a mistrial, allowing the attorneys of the FedEx driver to refile and hopefully get a better outcome and not a mistrial. So after he was boxed in and then, shot at multiple times, he immediately pulled over and called a supervisor before he called the police. Now, the judge who declared the mistrial harshly criticized the detective for their mishandling of the case, including the officer's testimony that they withheld a video of their interview with the FedEx driver after the incident. So again, that's a little bit more evidence of police corruption and racism. Then more racism, of course, and in Florida, Bunnell, Florida. A Bunnell Elementary School is under fire for having an assembly. And it's not just that they had an assembly, obviously. It is because it was an assembly of 4th and 5th graders, but they only called in the Black students, not the white ones. They just called in the Black students, taking them out of their classes. And it was just so that they could hold a PowerPoint presentation about how low their standardized test scores are. The presentation was led by 2 Black teachers who stated that Black students had underperformed on standardized tests for the past 3 years. They discussed how students with higher grades had a better chance of getting into college and making something of themselves, while students with lower grades had a higher chance of going to jail, getting shot, or getting killed. And this is according to the parents of the students. The school district officials apologized and said there was no intended malice. I call bullshit. They claimed that the assembly was a horrible, horrific mistake that shouldn't have happened, and the principal has been put on paid administrative leave pending investigation. Now, the claim that it wasn't malicious in intent, I think, is bullshit, because there is no way that all of the Black kids in that school scored low on their tests, while all of the white kids scored high. And if that, for some odd reason, some magical, mythical thing happened, look to the teachers, not the students. Because you can be guaranteed that out of the Black students and out of the white students, some did well on their tests and some did poorly. It is not split based on race. So there absolutely was malicious intent behind this. It was designed to make Black kids feel bad about being Black. Or they would have called the entire school in and had an assembly about how we needed to improve all test scores. So, and this took place in Florida, and I thought in Florida there was this weird law that you can't make a student feel bad about themselves. But that's right, it's just white students that you can't make feel bad about themselves. Black students, okay, it's all right. Now, still in Florida, we are dealing with outbreaks of diseases that are not common. So, leprosy, for one, in Florida. While the US still has very few cases of leprosy, there has recently been an uptick in cases across the country. However, 80% of those cases are found in Florida, and 20% of those cases are found in Central Florida. All cases, Central Florida was the one region. So what is leprosy? There's a lot of misconceptions about it, but it is a bacterial condition caused by a bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae. It is slow growing and it involves the skin and peripheral nerves. The symptoms include mild hypopigmented patches on the skin. Hypopigmented means less melanin, so whiter, lighter patches. Or more severe symptoms are when the immune system is not doing well with the bacteria. It causes widespread papules or nodules, like blisters and pimples, or bumps across the skin. Other features include a thickening of the skin on the forehead or an enlargement of the ears, reduced sensation or numbness and weakness in the hands or feet, non-healing wounds, blisters, and cracks in the skin of the hands or feet. It is spread through prolonged contact with respiratory droplets, like spittle when you talk or sneeze. It is spread by someone who has the disease that has been untreated, because there is a treatment for it. It is a multi-drug regimen that you take for several months. And it's shown, like a antibiotic, that after a few days of starting this regimen, that the contagion is greatly lessened. So it is not highly infectious, unlike a lot of the myths surrounding it. And in fact, 95% of all humans have an immunity to it, a natural, innate immunity. So there are two theories as to what is causing this And it's one of those theories is that it's transmitted from animal to human, and the most commonly known animal that carries that bacteria is the nine-banded armadillo. But there has also been soil samples that have found to carry the bacteria within the soil. So some experts have speculate that leprosy may be an endemic now in Central Florida. And an endemic means that there are enough sources of infection to allow the disease to spread. So that's one of the diseases in Florida. Another one is dengue fever. Dengue fever is a virus and it's spread through mosquitoes. Common symptoms are fever, nausea, rash, aches, and pains. There is a dengue vaccine available in the US. The CDC is also collaborating with 3 state health departments on an investigation of 7 locally acquired cases of malaria in Sarasota County, Florida, 1 case in Cameron County, Texas, and 1 in Maryland. Now, there's no evidence to suggest that these causes are related, and most cases of malaria are imported into the US. They're not locally spread or contracted. And the symptoms include fever, chills, headache, body aches, and fatigue, and the CDC urges you to seek urgent care. Now, both dengue fever and malaria are spread by mosquitoes, so get rid of any stagnant water you have around your house. If you have any buckets or plant holders, pots that collect rainwater, dump them out. So, to carry on with our theme of diseases, there is a new strain of COVID that was spreading in the UK, like Holland, I believe it was, but it's now been found, as far as I know, only in Minnesota. It is called the BA.2.86. It is a new strain of the virus that causes COVID, and health authorities and scientists are racing to study it. But for now, officials say they are well equipped to handle the new strain, and early assessments suggest that current treatments and tests, as well as upcoming vaccines will be rolled out next month, will not be negated by this disease. They will not be rendered useless. So now let's get into some politics, because of course I'm obsessed with politics. The House Freedom Caucus is again trying to hold the government hostage. And basically, I will tell you what the actual reasoning behind it is, but basically it's like, my interpretation is, you're making our big guy, our main god, be held accountable, and we don't like it, so we don't want you to do it anymore. And get your damn woke out of the military because it's affecting our military readiness. And if we don't get our way, we're gonna do something bad. And that's kind of what they're saying. So their real reasoning is they refuse to support any measure that, quote, continues Democrats' bloated COVID-era spending and, quote, simultaneously fails to force the Biden administration to follow the law and fulfill its most basic responsibilities. So they totally are skipping over the fact that it's their guy, Trump, who spent more than any other president ever and increased the deficit by 1/3 of the entire total deficit just in 4 years. And Biden has dropped that deficit down. So their whole claims about bloated spending and stuff like that, it's just an excuse to try to leverage control in a situation that they know they don't really have any control in. Now, they also demand an increase in border agents, again, ignoring or not aware of the fact that this year alone, 300 border agents have been hired, additional border agents. So they also want to continue to build a border wall, which the wall, the 57-ish miles that was built, is falling apart, and people could just cut through the metal or get a ladder and climb over it. It was not effective. But they're still going to say that they need that border wall because it will stop people. And it won't. They also want to address the weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI and make them focus on prosecuting real criminals and not political witch hunts and targeting law-abiding citizens. Now, that is the part where they are basically saying, stop investigating Trump and stop investigating anyone involved with the attempts to overthrow the election and the January 6th insurrection. That's their only reasoning behind it, because they know that a lot of them probably eventually will be fined or held accountable in some way, shape, or form because they were right on board with it. The members of the Freedom Caucus. And they want to end the cancerous woke policies in the Pentagon, undermining our military's core warfighting mission. Higher-ups in the military have already said that inclusion and diversity makes us stronger. And what is affecting our military readiness is the lack of ability to do the promotions that Tommy Tuberville is holding back. Just because the military allows something that he doesn't like. So basically, what they're saying is that if we don't get our way, we're going to punish the entire country because it's leading to a government shutdown. And a government shutdown would mean all federal and government employees would not get paid. And it would affect our credit ratings, all sorts of different things. So yeah, they are holding our government hostage so that they can get their own way like petulant little teenagers. And it's just proving, yet again, that Republicans hold their party and their own ideologies over the country. They don't care about the safety of the country, the unity of the country, or anything like that. They only care about their far-right party and their far-right policies and forcing them on the nation. That's all they care about. And now I wanted to just mention Trump's mugshot. My God, have you seen it? He is big mad that he is being held accountable and in a public way. He's managed to avoid mugshots thus far. But now on his fourth indictment in Georgia, he got a mugshot and he looks pissed. It's hysterical. It will go down in history. It's iconic. As well as all the other mugshots for his co-conspirators. They will all go down in history because this is a historical event. We are seeing history in the making. We are seeing an attempt at an overthrow of our government. A rise of American citizens fighting against their own country. Under the guise and their justification that they're patriots. They're fighting to save their country. But anyone with any sort of common sense and critical thinking skills knows that's not true. That the reason that they're rising up and trying to fight and overthrow our government is based on lies and fabrications brought about by Trump and his sycophants in Congress. And they fell for it. And they just don't realize that they are going down in history as the traitors to the United States government. Not the heroes, not the saviors, the traitors. They will not be looked on nicely. They will be judged harshly in the future. And schools will teach about this time period and say, this was not okay. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Like, share, subscribe, all that usual stuff. Vote. No matter how big, how small, how inconsequential, your vote matters. And read everything you can get your hands on. It's our best defense against the right. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.